Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the Coin Flip. My name is Flake, and I'll be your host. If you've never caught the coin flip before, the premise is very simple. Two prominent personalities in Gwent are going to face off on 3 topics of interest. We'll flip a coin to see who goes first, then each player will get about 90 seconds or so to present their initial arguments. Once those are put away, it's gloves off, no holds barred debate. With the rules said, let's meet our contestants. Our first contender is the face of Gwent casting, having done play-by-play for every major Gwent tournament to date. He is also the host of the Commander's Horn podcast, released weekly. I'm very pleased to introduce McBeard to the show. And facing off against the bearded one is a multiple-time Grandmaster and co-host of the Grandmaster Plan podcast. You can see him lurking on Pro Ladder. He'll also be co-hosting the upcoming Wild Hunt North America tournament taking place on February 24th in Philadelphia. He is, of course, JoeSn0w. Alright, gentlemen, so I'm sure you guys are well familiar with the rules, so without further ado, we're going to offer this little olive branch out from one to the other. But McBee, do you have any words for your opponent, JoeSn0w?
Well, I mean, JoeSn0w, he's a good guy. I've known him for a little bit of time now. And even though he's not smart enough to operate Twitter, and he barely can handle Twitch, one thing he does know is how to play Gwent. So I'm sure this will be a good match.
Those were so good to start off with. All right, well, Joe, the man who, before the recording of this, has come out and said, I have a plan. So, Joe, do you have any words of wisdom or, you know, some smack for your opponent, McBeard?
I'm a man of few words, but much action. All I want to do is just show that I'm taking the gloves off right here.
Oh.
And is it true, McBeard, that you indeed hate freedom and puppies? Is that true?
No.
No. He has a puppy, so at least one of those is debunked right off the bat.
All right.
The other one we
Let's
can
not
never...
let
Strong
the
counterattack.
away.
The answer is no.
Yes, for those without the benefit of, I guess, eyes or such, Joe actually took off his gloves. He had gloves on for this. What he was doing with them prior to this, anybody's game. Nonetheless, we're going to start off with the real coin flip. And McBee, since you are the pioneer, the elder statesman here, we're going to give you the benefit of calling heads or tails, and then I make the flip, and then we'll go from there, my friend.
I'm going to go with tails.
Tails. That is 3 in a row for tails on the coin flip show.
Oh, really?
And, yes, absolutely. And it is actually heads, and this is the first time that anyone has been wrong on the coin flip. So, JoeSn0w, I'm going to read the first statement, the first topic of discussion, and you're going to decide if you want to defend or debunk. And the first topic is, the card advantage spy issue is fixed. There's no longer an issue.
I'm going to choose debunk.
You're going to debunk. All right, then. In that case, we're going to go and... so he's deferring the kick to McBee. So once again, McBee, the card advantage spy issue, it's fixed. It's no longer an issue. Tell us why.
Well, as you know, the card advantage spy situation was in a dire state. Summoning Circle, Decoy, Emir. There's so many ways to play multiple spies, and it could really snowball out of control. Like, you could maybe counter spy a little bit, but if you weren't able to really match your opponent's kind of avalanche of spies, your opponent could get 2-3 cards on you depending on the coin flip. So limiting it to just one spy makes it so the spy isn't even all that appealing anymore, because you are it's a little tougher to get the card advantage just with one spy, because now your opponent can likely get the spy. There's lots of ways to procure that spy through Alzur's Double Cross, and there's the extra added piece of the spy going to the graveyard. There's lots of factions that can take advantage of that extra strength in the graveyard. Well, monsters, really. So it can become a liability even in some situations. So I think limiting it to one simple situation, one instance of spy, it is more likely that you have an answer for it and less likely that it'll get out of control. And ultimately, you can't take the spies out of Gwent. So this is the best way to do it.
All right, well, those are some good points there. All right, I got you. Now, Joe is chomping at the bit. Joe's like ready to go. The gloves are already off, and I don't know what else he could possibly take off to remain this.
Nothing else. I don't want to frighten anyone.
Okay, well, Joe, go for it, man.
So while one could certainly argue that, yes, you can't roll completely out of control with multiple spies anymore, I would argue that the impact of having one spy is even more polarizing now. You now have less potential options to answer a spy. If you're missing your spy, you can no longer summoning circle to make up for it, and the relatively lower number of total spies is going to grow the difference between having one spy and having zero. Whereas having 3 to having 2, there's a difference there, but having 1 to having none, particularly with the coin here, is just downright abusive. I don't even think that was the major problem with the spies. The major problem with the spies stemming from the cheap spy interactions coming out of heroes such as River Hoog, coming out of Rain Farn with things like Roach, things like that. I believe that those are the true root of the problem, all going back to the coin toss. And red coin plus 1 spy, I think, is probably in its worst state that it's ever been right now, although the games do feel a little bit healthier as a whole. So I'll concede a little bit on that point.
All right, that's so one might argue that it's an issue, but would you be that one, McBee? Would you attack that argument that it's not only is it not fixed, it's possibly, as Joe says, in the worst state it's ever been?
It's interesting that he said it's in the worst state it's ever been, but he also said that it's a healthy change and that the game is healthier for it. So which one is it? I mean, it can't be both. It can't be both, because if it's healthier, then it can't be any worse than it used to be. But I think that, honestly, every step forward is a step in the right direction for balance. Unfortunately, my point of view that I need to argue is that the spy issue is fixed completely. I definitely agree that it is better in this way.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
I understand your point about saying that, yeah, now we don't have to play this 5-minute minigame of bouncing spies off each other anymore. I think that the 1 spy, particularly on the red coin, is at its most impactful state right now. Allow me to reconfigure the exact words I use. I think the presence of less spies makes the spies that are there even more impactful. So particularly when you're in a red coin plus spy type of scenario, I think you're now able to extract maximum value out of it. When you win a round 1, you can now throw your spy down much more freely because your opponent has less possible answers to this. There's not summoning circle to find them a spy. They have to have their spy or they don't. And I do think that these polarizing situations of just, well, I didn't have the right coin and my opponent had the spy are going to lead to some pretty big blowouts in games.
All right, that's not bad. I mean, I'm coming from the sort of school of thought that any type of just drop and draw type of card advantage mechanic should probably be reworked and out of the game. So I think you guys made excellent points, and it's unfortunate that it's literally a polarizing statement. It's either an absolute on one end or Joe brought it all the way to the end. Joe, you could have said it's almost there, but it's not fixed. But no, he took it he hit it in full 5th gear reverse and said it's the worst. Which McBee essentially just kind of eviscerated immediately by just using your own words against you. Point, McBee. Points don't mean anything, so it doesn't even matter.
Rookie mistake. Won't happen again.
I won that one because
there are no winners. There are absolutely no winners. I am the winner. No, it's okay. It's all good. But those are some solid statements, and I just want to ask you your opinion on this in terms of, card. Little off topic from the actual statement, but do you think that card advantage cards should have a little bit more investment into them and not just drop and draw on a round 2 or where a round essentially has no significance?
Well, if the question is directed to me, and now that that round in that discussion is over, I would like to say that I actually do not believe what I said. I do think that I agree with Joe. It is very polarizing right now. It is very polarizing, and the argument is the investment of points. You are giving your opponent points, but if you use them in a round where the points don't matter as much because you've already won the first round in some situations and your opponent can't answer that, you are in such a prime position, especially in a situation where like JoeSn0w is still a card and that kind of stuff, and you can still make incredibly huge last plays. It's tough, and I played a lot today, and it was really, it really did feel like but it's not even like the root of the problem is the spies necessarily. The root of the problem is just because there's no way to stop the disadvantage of going first sometimes, and it just exacerbates the problem. And a lot of the problems with Gwen right now are the things that make it feel even worse to be in a disadvantageous position with turn order. So that's how I feel about it. What was the question again?
The question essentially was, do cards, should we just get rid of drop and draw style card advantage cards and move more towards like an Okfist or Siri, vanilla Siri style card advantage where there's options for answering it, and it's more of an investment piece. It's something that you have to sort of protect or drop strategically and maybe get punished.
Yeah, that or come up with a solution for the coin flip that puts your opponent in actually make a tough decision about it.
Perfect. Joe, last word on this one.
I mean, for the most part, I actually agree with a lot of what he was saying. I would like to see more of a shift towards cards that are a little bit more difficult than just, set it and forget it with the card advantage spies. I do like things like Okfist. In fact, if anyone remembers Closed Beta Kieran, that was actually my favorite card in all of Gwent. It was risky, it had some really bad potentials, but God, when it worked, it just felt beautiful. And then you had to mulligan away a 1-strength card. It had its upsides and its downsides. But I do like card advantage being able to be interacted with. And I think if more of that's printed, then maybe the spies aren't such a big problem once there's more ways to accrue this card advantage. And I think the printing of cards that actually incentivize you to want to go first really help alleviate a lot of this problem. Because I strongly am with McBearded on this one, that it's all coming out of the red coin issue and things that just exacerbate that situation and make it worse.
All right, well, we're going to give a sympathy point out there to JoeSn0w for making a Ron Popeil Postamatic reference with the set it and forget it, which is fantastic. And that's that's what we do here at the coin flip. Even though there was some heated battle, we all came together and met into a central point. We're all friends again until the next round, which is coming up right after this. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A cold, barren city. Known for cheesesteaks, Italian boxers with speech impediments, and now Gwent. All right, we're back, and as you can see, the opponents are ready to go. They're jostling and they're sparring here. They are just chopping at the bit to get at round two. We'll call it a draw for round two and end it on a nice framework of friendship, which is good, which we're going to try to destroy right now. And we're going to have JoeSn0w defending the following topic, the topic being cards that seem to be auto-include, appearing in a vast majority of decks, need to be reevaluated and nerfed. And this is coming from a lot of the PTR notes that came out and saying along the lines of, well, we changed this card because it was in 95% of monster decks to deal with like Slizzard or something like that, which led them to go ahead and nerf it. So I want to say that, Joe, your statement that you're defending is that cards that seem to be auto-include appearing in, the vast majority of decks, they need to be reevaluated, they need to be nerfed and changed.
All right. Not bad, not bad. So I do think that this type of card needs to be evaluated and potentially nerfed, in particularly when you're talking about neutral cards, right? A lot of what makes card games so fun and so replayable, the reason you can sink so many hours into these things is because it always feels unique and different each and every single time you play, right? There's always a new spin on it, a new angle. What could happen here? What's my opponent thinking? What they're doing? When you see these presence of cards constantly in every single Skellige deck and every single Scoia'tael deck, and to a worse example, take something like Commander's Horn. McBeard might know something about Commander's Horn. Take something like Commander's Horn that was a neutral card, and you just see it in 75% of the decks in the meta. This is going to homogenize the way games feel and make them feel very similar, the same, drawn out. You can expect what's coming, and this is sort of what can lead to a very stale metagame in Gwent. You really want the games to feel different, to feel dynamic, and when they all start to blend together and you're seeing the same pile of cards over and over, even within different archetypes within a faction, this is where you start to run into some problems with replayability.
All right, I like it. Big B?
While I do agree with Joe's point when maybe discussing neutral cards, because homogenization is not good, I think it's okay that factions can have strong cards. And I think that it's okay for those strong cards to see a high play rate, because we're talking about play rate, not necessarily power, although they are usually the same. A lot of the times, net decking and a lot of the influence of popular personalities may popularize a card that, on paper works for you, but there's a lot of other options out there. And I think as long as there are a lot of other options out there, that the balance is somewhat achieved, like between silvers and golds within factions, that it's okay for there to be like strong cards. Like Shani getting nerfed, I don't agree with that happening. Just because Northern Realms was playing a lot of Shani, I think that speaks more to the library of gold cards for Northern Realms. And I think that when you keep changing cards that are very strong over and over again with each patch, it becomes harder to read a faction at any given time because things can change. Now, change is good, but we should try to approach like a strong standpoint of faction identity, and sometimes you need really strong cards to kind of anchor down an archetype. And I think like a card like Sigurdrifa, which is going to stay probably the same for a while, even though she did get a change, I think that she's still very, very strong, and her include rate is still incredibly high. Restore was nerfed, it still has a very high include rate. So I don't think that they should further nerf these cards. I think that the spirit of these cards needs to stay alive, and I think that it's okay for factions to have strong cards, bottom line.
So what lens are you looking at this through? If you're looking at Gwent as a game that you could potentially play for 5 or 10 years, 5 years down the line from now, do you still want to see Sigdrifa into Skell? Because I know I don't. 5 years down the line, I don't want to be losing to Shiru Scorch over and over again. 5 years down the line, I don't want to see Ithlin Tremors just popping up in every single deck. It's going to kill the longevity of the game. I think there needs to be dynamics, and even as you said, there needs to be some change. Change is good. Change is what's going to keep this card game growing, changing, and more dynamic, and that's just going to incentivize better gameplay over time.
I'm looking at it through the lens of the adding of new cards to change the meta and to change gameplay, because Sigurdrifa into Skull is very strong right now, obviously, but like the idea of what I don't want to see is every patch CD Projekt Red tries to change the power level of cards, and then something else just becomes super strong, and it becomes more unpredictable with each patch what's going to be overpowered, or what's going to be overtuned, or what's going to be the next new auto-include power card. I think that adjusting other cards maybe that are underpowered and adding new cards to change the dynamic of the game is a better approach than just nerfing everything that kind of sees a high play rate.
Those are good points, and I want to just jump in here, and as you were saying, one of the biggest ones, and I'm glad that you brought it up, Joe, was one of the biggest offenders in terms of inclusion rate in the past season was Ithlin. And I mean, it's easy to say Ithlin Tremors because that was pretty much 85% of the times it was played, it was Ithlin Tremors, unless it was Ithlin Thunder twice or whatnot. But that didn't see a nerf, which kind of boggles my mind. But they understood that it was another offending factor that was making her so playable or so oppressive, which was the Tremors, and then they fixed that. But things like Slizzard, and that's in a multitude of important decks right now, like Consume or Nova Deathwish, or in anything, frankly, you can fit that card in many aspects for thinning and for just drawing and whatnot. But to use that mentality on that card and then not on others, it just seems interesting. But McBeard, I think that you made a phenomenal point where certain cards see a lot of play because of just the fact that the card pool itself is still limited to the fact where it seems like for instance, for Northern Realms, you might have 1 or 2 cards that fit into a particular archetype, but Shiny fits in everything, and she's not. Yep. She fits in everything to great effectiveness. So, anyways, I mean, you guys did fantastic, but now again, with your particular or your assigned opinions aside, McBeard, what is your actual your real feelings on this?
I would actually argue that Shiny isn't fantastic in 40 card full test, but I think that this is actually a pretty gray area. I think that realistically, like cards that are like really strong need to be addressed, and cards that are like really weak can be revisited. But if something isn't auto included, may just because it could be because it's a fun card that is also has a fair strength level. And I just think that it's really just about not having a card be so incredibly overpowered. And I think that I definitely agree that a neutral card being very good is a big problem. I also think that Commander's Horn was maybe over nerfed.
It's a little bit of bias, just maybe a little bit of bias.
I mean, it's a really kind of, it's nebulous for me. This one isn't as clear cut as the other one as far as the spy question. I think it's really just, I just want there to always be I want there to be really good choices when it comes to deck building. I don't want it to be well, I only truly have two or one flexible silver slots in any given faction deck because I would be foolish to not include these cards. I think that that's bad. But I think it's okay if there's a high play rate for some cards.
All right, Joe, last word again.
Yeah, I believe the majority of what I said, but I also agree with McBeard on a couple of things. Like, play rate is a factor you should take into account when you're looking to change or nerf cards, but it should not be the defining factor, right? Shawnee was probably, in my opinion, an example of the other Northern Realms golds just not being particularly great, right? I just think that comparatively, she's sort of vanilla-ish in a way that she can kind of fit everywhere, and she's always pretty good value. So she was fine, and they just hit her on play rate, and I don't necessarily think that was correct. Yet I'm completely in favor of Slizzard getting hit because, I mean, name me a monster deck that's not going to put Slizzard in. It's just rate, value. It's probably still just overpowered for what it is. I think it's perfectly fine to hit a card like Slizzard, and I think that it's a very complex issue that going all black or all white on it, it's about the gray areas in between, and you need to use play rate as one of the determining factors, not the determining factor when you're trying to make these decisions.
I feel, just a last piece here, I feel like Shawnee was almost like, you know, when like if you're ever speeding and you get hit by like a speed cam and they send you the picture in the mail, you know, where you have no option to sort of give context to why you're driving. It seems like she just got nailed by that, where they just like
she was just going too fast.
She was just going too fast. People saw her coming, like, you know, she was in everything, and then it just
were you following me home?
Yeah, with Stennis in tow every single time, but she's just there, and it just seemed like they picked her off purely from just sort of like a speed cam saying, you know what, we're not going to really give it a really good look or an argument, but we see that you're always there, so we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna knock you down a point or so. Anyways, we're not gonna be slowing down, and we're gonna be into round 3 right after this. Do you have a topic that you want discussed on the coin flip? Send it my way, and you might see it on a future episode. All right, and we're back to round 3 of the coin flip, and this one is a little bit different. It's the topics that we're going to talk about, or the topic that we're going to be discussing in this case, is not going to be so prominent on the Gwent scene, but it might be something that you're interested in, especially with the people that we're speaking with right now. So, Joe, I'm calling an audible on this one. I am going to have you defend this statement. McBee, you're going to be taking the other side of the coin. So, Joe, the statement that you have to defend with all your heart and soul, with a smile on your face, is the following. It is always the right thing to do to GG your opponent in all situations.
So it's very clearly always the right thing to do to GG your opponent after every single match. Who cares if they're playing Mill? Who cares if they want their 5 minutes in fame and they spend their entire match emoting you? Who cares if they're playing Dolblath on a light cavalry for the 3rd time in a row when they're on the red coin? Who cares about any of this? The truth of the matter is they're probably people too, and they need love, they need GGs. And particularly if they're a Mill player, that's extra incentive, and that's an extra incentive to GG them because they need that extra ore so they can build a deck that's not Mill, so you don't have to play against them next time. I think my case is rested.
Wow, oh McBee, wow. Good thing the gloves are off, because now I can see the backhand of that statement. Oh my god. All right, McBee, you're up, my man.
Well, the thing about Gwent is sometimes your opponent will play Mill, and sometimes your opponent will rope you, and sometimes they'll emote you all day long, especially if they know who you are, if they know you're a streamer, and sometimes they'll even snipe you. Sometimes they'll be in your chat and they'll say, I can see your hand, and they'll do all those things, and they'll just take all your power away from you. But I still have one little bit of power left, and that is the power to not give you a prize for making my life more difficult. And I am going to use that. It is the only thing that will keep me sane. It is the only thing I have left in this world after you burn me down. I am just not going to give you that little bit. You will just, you know, I'll keep going on with my life. They'll keep going on with their stinking lives, but they won't have anything from me. They'll have to get it somewhere else. It is the only power that you have left. And giving the players the power is something, I mean, if you follow social media, you know that there's a lot of people who say, I don't give GG to this, I don't give GG to that. It's the only thing that gives them some sort of happiness in a world that feels so, so cruel.
Wow, I am so glad that Joe is on this side of the coin, because Joe, you got to defend your statement, because, I mean, McBee made such an amazingly, you know, passionate argument. He said, this is the last hurrah. This is my last sort of stand. I don't know if there's any Call of Duties, but remember, like, I forgot what it was called, but you know,
martyrdom where you drop the grenade.
But there's that too. But there was the one that was like Last Wish, or I don't know what it was, but when you're about to die and you're on the ground
and you have the pistol, yeah.
That's what it is. It's the last FU to the opponent. And you know, I mean, like, Joe, you got to come out swinging harder than that, my friend. Tell me why you love to GG. Okay, let's put it this way. Somehow, there is a create mechanic that puts three of those ii in your opponent's deck, and then he somehow goes back in time and plays 14 spies on the board for you, and he mills you to 0, and you lose, and he's emoting and he's roping. Tell me, why should you GG this guy?
To set an example for the future, mostly for the children, watch Flake. What you really need to do here is just be an upstanding pillar member of the community. And while this mill-playing, Doblathana light cavalry creating, stream sniping, emoting person is in your channel taunting you, you have to show him that you are above it, that you cannot be touched by his aggressive actions. You need to show him that you are just a level above, and you will remain unfazed, untouched, unbroken. Hit the GG button, give that man his 5 or send him on his way.
That was almost biblical. I am so glad that we got to talk about that, because my goodness, the passion and fire is actually burning my earlobes here. That is beautiful. Now, dare I even go down the road of what you guys actually think about the GG? And
redacted.
You know, it's funny. I actually am probably more on the side of always give the GG, because I actually think that it doesn't matter. Who cares? Like, I mean, I don't think I've ever not GG'd because I was mad, unless, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I've ever done it. I think I've GG'd almost all the time. Like, I just do it all the time.
Stronger man than me. I used to be that way, man, and it's just broken me over time. It is my last bastion. That's exactly what I'm holding on to.
It's so funny that we had to argue it the other way around.
Stream, I'm just like, not again. The
Yeah.
guy's just sitting there roping, emoting, hitting you with everything he's got. Look at me, I played my last card that wins the game. Isn't that great? Hi, I'm in your chat. GG, buddy.
I mean, I have turned off emotes for my opponents, so like I don't have to deal with that. And roping is fine because it means I can read my chat, and sometimes I don't even notice that they're roping. Like, I don't know, like, it's just.
See,
I've never been like the I don't GG for this, I don't GG for that. I've just never really done that.
And I've gone down the route of what McBeard says, where it's your last sort of hurrah, it's your martyrdom. It is. It's chucking the grenade over the freaking half wall when you're down to no, I don't know if there's any PUBG players, but the shield's coming in. You've got no chance of making it into the safe zone, so you just start hucking grenades over chasms and just crossing your fingers and praying. But that's what it is. It's just saying, you know what? F you. Just a little bit. And to say what you're saying about, blocking people who emote, I like to know who the assholes are, so then I have the option to not GG you. Give me all of your,
Preach it.
all of that angst and hit that button, because I know that when I skip from, previous screen, next screen, in between, that send good game button is a ghost to me, mofo, and I'm never going to go near it. But, gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much, because this has been a phenomenal episode of the Coin Flip, and I want to go ahead and say that McBeard and JoeSn0w will be at the upcoming Wild Hunt tournament that is happening on February 24th. They are going to be casting it. That's going to be the duo for you. So if you like what you see here, you'll definitely like what you see at that tournament. McBeard, where can we find you, my friend?
You can find me on Twitch at McBearded. You can find me on Twitter at McBeardCH. I also post videos on YouTube at McBeard. And I'm also the host and producer of Commander's Horn Podcast, a weekly Gwent podcast that is currently, as of tomorrow, right after the dev stream, well, at the time of recording this, going into its 71st episode, and that's really cool. And I'm part of the Gwent Masters casting team. You can find me for Gwent Open, Gwent Challenger. I am behind the desk, and of course at Wild Hunt Philly as well. And yeah, follow me, tune into the stream. We try to stream at least 5 days a week, and that's me.
All right, JoeSn0w, how about yourself, man? Where do we find you?
You can find me on my Twitch, twitch.tv/JoeSn0w. You can also listen to me every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, on the Grandmaster Plan podcast. And perhaps most importantly, you can find me February 24th at the Wild Hunt Tournament, working with McBearded, the best in the business. Cannot wait to get out there. It's going to be an awesome time, guys. Don't miss it.
Now, let's just take a quick note and notice that there was no Twitter mention there, so we got to get a campaign going.
Not like this, dude.
A Kickstarter.
But
It's a Kickstarter, not necessarily for to get him a Twitch account, a Twitter account, but more for the lessons on how to use it. Nonetheless, it's time for parting shots. So, Mr. McBeard, any final words for your opponent?
Joe, I'm just looking forward to meeting you on the 24th, and you were a worthy opponent, even though I crushed you.
That's right. Even if you did get me you got a little bit of the better of me in the first one today. We'll see how you.
I don't even
after
believe
a
what
few
I said.
pints of beer.
All right.
I'll see you the 24th.
Gentlemen,
Cheers,
thank you
cheers.
so much. This has been episode 3 of the Coin Flip. We will catch you again on the other side of the coin. Adios.